Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film The Lost World: Jurassic Park from 1997. The thing about The Lost World is that it felt like Spielberg was trying to do something different. Like he kind of overthought it, but also made a really corporate studio movie. And Spielberg is often criticized as being a studio director. He is a studio director. He's kind of like an auteur studio director mix, really. And this is much more of his studio side, even more than Jurassic Park. But it's like all his theories that you might think might make a movie like Jurassic Park deeper completely fail him. Now, it should be noted that the film Spielberg directed between the first Jurassic Park and The Lost World was Schindler's List, and that put Spielberg on a whole new level. He had a crazy insane year in 1993. He had the highest grossing film of all time, and then his other film won him the Best Director and Best Picture Oscars. So he really had gotten the respect he had wanted to and strived to get throughout most of his career. And so his big follow-up was this, which kind of confirms all the shit people said about him before he got all the respect. Apparently he realized while making it that what was he doing with this? He didn't really know what he was doing with this film. And it really feels that way. He doesn't do a lot of sequels. In fact, this is his only sequel that isn't an Indiana Jones sequel. But this film kind of doesn't really get what made the first Jurassic Park so special and so universal and so easy to understand. It feels like the film's trying to act like it can make a better movie than the first Jurassic Park by not having all the characters so pronounced, so easily understood. Instead, it makes a murky, regular blockbuster, and that's not what made that film so special. It kind of makes you appreciate what that film had going for it, which kind of reminds me of the line from the first Jurassic Park, where Jeff Goldblum says, "You knew you could, but you didn't think about whether you should." Jeff Goldblum's character of Dr. Ian Malcolm has been summoned by John Hammond to go into this island that was an island where they apparently bred the dinosaurs and then moved them to another island, which is something they did not mention in the first movie, typical sequel logic, and that he has to go to this island and make sure everything is okay and get photographic evidence to show to people. Doesn't really want to go because of what happened last time, but then John Hammond mentions that his girlfriend, Dr. Sarah Harding, played by Julianne Moore, is there, so he goes off and he's supposed to hang out with his daughter also, but he can't, so he's gonna send her with somebody, but then she stows away on this expedition, and then he goes there and they start seeing the dinosaurs and stuff, but then another team sent by the corporation InGen that Richard Attenborough's character of John Hammond has been shut out of the board, and they're trying to make some money and get some dinosaurs back and reopen some sort of a park to kind of save the company, are sent there as well. And then as these two teams conflict, they eventually get trapped on the island and have to kind of find a way to tell helicopters to get them out of there. The idea of making a darker Jurassic Park movie when I was like 13 sounded really cool, and there is that kind of sense that if something's darker, it's more grown up and grittier. That doesn't mean it's a well-told story. That's just describing the kind of story. That's not describing how well told it is. I kind of wish people would think about that when they're talking about, oh, that's a darker, grittier kind of thing. I don't know if this starts the trend, but it does kind of feel like it starts the trend of the darker, grittier sequel or reboot, and that's kind of what they do in this. Some of that works kind of well, and I kind of like specifically how he hides a lot of the special effects in darkness, and that's kind of cool considering how special effects, specifically CGI, kind of computer generated special effects, had kind of become more and more of a thing since Jurassic Park. And so showing it off and really showing it like the first one maybe wouldn't have worked. I kind of feel like if you'd done more of a direct sequel than this murkier thing, it probably maybe would have done better, but that's a fantastical idea that has no basis in anything, so whatever. I love the sequence where they're in the tall grass with the raptors. Does give it kind of more of a horror movie feel to it, and it does have a little bit of scarier moments because he's using that darkness. I know this is supposed to be darker in tone than the first film, but like most of the time when people talk about darker reboots and stuff, they talk about like the emotions and it's like darker story wise, and this film, it just feels like they were like, let's not have it be as bright, which was kind of a little silly, to be honest. I mean, it's like, oh, okay, it's not as bright. I guess that's gonna make a difference. This is actually one of the last times Spielberg really does horror. You think of Jaws, or even whether he did or did not direct Poltergeist or whatever, he really didn't do any horror kind of stuff after this film, with the little dinosaurs attacking the girl and that one guy, Dieter, I think his name is, and you never see him do that kind of stuff anymore. It's kind of sad. This is kind of the end of like the horror element of Spielberg's directing career. I really doubt he would do kind of like a horror type of movie now, and this is a little more more horrific, it's a little more violent, a little more gory, not too much really, but it really kind of pushes the envelope in terms of doing that for a PG-13 dinosaur film that kids can still get into. Just a little bit, not too much. That's there, and a lot of these action sequences don't seem to be building a story. They seem to be there because this is a Jurassic Park movie and we need to thrill you. The whole story is kind of written in a way that you wouldn't have as much of that stuff, but they kind of just put it in there anyway. The last film, everyone's wearing different colored clothing, so you get their different personalities, and they are actually very different personalities. And there's too many characters in this film, like just too many smaller characters, too many to name. Is like you have Jeff Goldblum, Julianne Moore, then you have like the lawyer, you have Vince Vaughn in this, you have this guy with a beard or something, you have like X amount of people working for InGen. It just like gets too convoluted with all of that. The universal quality of the first one that didn't have as many characters, I think worked a lot better than when you have too many characters and they're not all as distinctive. They kind of just get all mushed into the background. I also kind of wonder why bring back a character like Dr. Ian Malcolm, because like he was the guy who broke his leg in the first one and then was kind of out of commission for a lot of it. Why isn't Sam Neill the one to come back, and Laura Dern? Why didn't they bring them back and instead they bring Jeff Goldblum? Like, they don't even really mention them. It seems a little odd to bring Jeff Goldblum back. I know Independence Day had happened and stuff, but like, I guess because this is based on the Michael Crichton book and maybe that's why, but I still think it's kind of a little stupid. It just feels like, well, this is the actor we could sign for this. Like, it still feels that way. In the first film, it felt like Spielberg was just doing old kind of monster movie, like a creature film. And in this, it feels like he's doing that creature film's shitty sequel, but he directed it still with all the Spielberg flair and as like an incredible studio director. That sequence with the trailer with the glass breaking, it's incredible. That sequence is probably one of the best sequences in the movie. It means nothing. To the story, it doesn't mean very much. To the characters, it doesn't mean very much. And it doesn't mean much to you as an audience, except for that it's thrilling. That's kind of the thing with this movie, is like, it's not structured very well. It doesn't feel like he's really into the awe business. He's more trying to do more of a scary movie, but also more of a like deeper horror film also. There's so many motivations behind this that just don't really work for a Jurassic Park movie. You need to think about making a good summertime film, and he still has moments that do that, but the film as a whole isn't exactly trying to do that. And then it feels like it's going to end with the sequence where they get off of the island, and then there's a whole thing in San Diego, which just felt really tacked on. It felt like I watched a complete movie and then there was something else. And like in the first Jurassic Park, it does actually feel a little abrupt when they end with the Velociraptor being attacked by the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and that they just leave and that's the end of the movie. But that kind of worked for it. You know, there's a lot of things in the first Jurassic Park that don't make any sense. Logically, they work for the movie, so who cares? And in The Lost World, it's like pushing it too far, and it's like he's trying to think too logically while still trying to be illogical like the first film. He had done Schindler's List. He wanted to show how much of a better director he was since then, but like, the way he directed the first Jurassic Park was actually really good. It still worked really well for the kind of film it was. And this film doesn't really work great for the kind of film it was. Originally, Spielberg wasn't going to direct this. It was going to be Joe Johnston, but he was in post-production for Jumanji and couldn't really leave that, and he had to step away, and then Spielberg did it. But Joe Johnston ended up directing the third film and, you know, the first Captain America. And Spielberg said, you know, if there is a third one, you would direct it, and he made good on that promise. This is where the Spielberg as a kind of commercial director and the prestige Spielberg came head to head and made a more generic blockbuster than you'd really expect from someone like Spielberg. This isn't as distinct, it isn't as memorable. The reason for that is him trying to make it something more than it could really ever be or should be. Jurassic Park movies shouldn't be deep. You want to have a thrill ride, you want to have fun, you want to go, oh man, those velociraptors. And this film doesn't give you the sense of awe and wonder. It's like he listened to a lot of the criticism of the first film and turned it into something that made you go, if this is what you're going to do with that, this is like a way worse option. At the time, I actually remember it getting better received than now I'm reading it was. And it was a huge blockbuster, and it broke the opening weekend record at the time, which it held for like 4 years, which seems like a really long time to hold an opening weekend record nowadays. And I think it was like 80 million or something over Memorial Day weekend. They maybe shouldn't have made the Jurassic Park sequel they did with this. It's too much like a kind of horror movie sequel where they just kind of come up with like any sort of reason they can kind of come back. I get that this is based on a book. I don't know the book, and I know that Jeff Goldblum probably was just brought back because that character apparently represents Michael Crichton. No one's really that distinct. Jeff Goldblum kind of is. You get an early career performance from Vince Vaughn, which is kind of interesting to see him as kind of a smaller role at this time. The only person who I think is really good in this film, and even Julianne Moore I didn't think was that great, was Pete Peswadi, who plays kind of the guy who's like, you don't have to pay me, I just want to hunt a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's a generic part. It's not a part that most actors could have fun with, but that shows how great of a character actor he was, is that he could take on a part like this and make it the part of the movie. Like, I love just seeing his character. He was the only character I really cared about. He was kind of in the movie and then gone, but he's the most memorable. He really dominates every scene he's in. There's a certain amount of kind of character actor overacting he does, but he does it so perfectly for a movie like this. It's almost like he got like, you know what, this is a monster blockbuster kind of movie and I'm gonna go for it. And I think he really did. He got the kind of movie it was, and it felt like everyone else was doing like acting exercises that kind of failed and just made them bland actors, and this guy just was like, oh fuck that, I know what I'm doing. I've seen a monster movie before. And in a lot of ways this film does an even more typical monster movie kind of a thing, because it's named after Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World, and the end sequence in San Diego is done as tribute to the 1925 silent film, I believe. And that's kind of cool. Apparently the reason they didn't just call it The Lost World is because people thought that they would confuse it with that. It was named that as kind of a tribute, although I don't know how much of a tribute you're doing when you're just directly naming it after something. It does ring out as one of Spielberg's worst kind of blockbusters and worser movies. With a Spielberg film, you get that distinct showmanship, and you get that through the action sequences. When he has a cool sequence when someone's getting attacked by a dinosaur, it's simply incredible, but it just doesn't resonate with me. I wasn't as thrilled and as raptured in it. It felt like too long. It felt like the script didn't exactly know what it was doing. It's also disappointing when you think about Spielberg did like Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, and then this? Like, what? He tried to do the same thing in 97 that he did in 93 with this and Amistad. And although The Lost World Jurassic Park was the second highest grossing film of the year because of Titanic, which also won all the awards, and so Amistad didn't really get as nominated as probably it would have if Titanic wasn't there. Or at least that's what everybody thought at the time. Amistad's still a good movie. I think a lot better than The Lost World Jurassic Park. The Lost World just feels too much like kind of a crappier sequel that doesn't really get what was good about the first film. It's changing a lot of things that people were complaining about with the first film, but doesn't really think about why they're changing it. But it turns out like, no, you shouldn't have done that. You should think about why you're doing something. There's a reason certain studios don't change as much for a sequel, because they go, well, yeah, but that's actually why you liked it. Stop complaining about it. And I think in The Lost World it shows like sometimes you need to think about, that might be a valid argument, that might be a valid point, but that's not necessarily something you should change for a sequel. And it didn't feel like they really thought about that. Now the thing about Spielberg and The Lost World, regardless of this not being very good, it being kind of more of a studio blockbuster and things, it's still a Spielberg directed movie, and that's still a fun, thrilling thing to watch. That's kind of the thing that sort of saves this movie, is that only he could do some of these sequences, particularly the trailer sequence, how gifted he is at the technical aspect of it. And he even remarked on the first film that it was more about craft. And as a studio director who knows his craft, he still got it, but just he doesn't have it as much as he had it on Jurassic Park. Even when Jurassic Park, you're like, well, that wasn't as good as he was in the 70s and 80s. This feels like he's gotten even worse from the problems you have from the first film. It feels like he's going more down the slope of less being this postmodern director who's doing a blockbuster in a different kind of way. He's taking an older blockbuster and changing it, making it, doing it tongue-in-cheek or something, and this feels like he's really starting to eat his own tail. And I think that's probably why he realized this wasn't really working, and he didn't really make this kind of film again until he made that fourth shitty Indiana Jones movie. But before that, he kind of at least realized he was eating his own tail, and I think that shows how kind of smart of a filmmaker he was, and kind of started to reinvent himself. And you got the guy who was making things like AI and Minority Report and Munich, which kind of shows he at least recognized what was happening to his filmography, which shows a smarter and more self-aware director in a good sense, more than the self-aware director in the bad sense that this film really is. So if you have seen The Lost World, Jurassic Park, and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And check out my Jurassic Park review playlist. There will be another Jurassic Park review tomorrow. That is Jurassic Park 3. And then this Friday, there will be my review of Jurassic World. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.